Most veterans don't miss out on thousands of dollars in benefits because they don't qualify. They miss out because they never filed the right documents. Hidden in drawers, forgotten in folders, or never even mentioned by a single VA rep. These overlooked papers could mean the difference between scraping by and finally breathing easy. And the craziest part? You might already be eligible for more money right now, but unless you know exactly what to submit, the system won't lift a finger to tell you. You served your country, you showed up when it mattered most. But now the benefits you earned, the ones that were promised, could be slipping through the cracks, all because of paperwork you didn't know existed. This video isn't just a checklist, it's a wake-up call. We're going to walk through 9 overlooked documents that could unlock thousands in monthly VA benefits. And possibly change your life or the life of someone you love. Some of these are hiding in plain sight. Others are buried deep in VA red tape. But if you watch until the end, you'll know exactly what to look for, how to use them, and why every month you wait could be costing you serious money. Let's get into it. There's a reason so many veterans get denied benefits even when they clearly qualify. The records don't tell the full story. And the VA won't guess. That's where one of the most underused documents comes in. VA Form 21-4138, also known as the Statement of Support. At first glance, it doesn't look like much, just a simple page where you can write whatever you want, but that's exactly why it matters. This form gives you a chance to say what your records leave out, to explain symptoms, timelines, or events that were never properly documented. Maybe you didn't go to sick call for that injury. Overseas. Maybe your PTSD triggers don't show up on a medical chart. Or maybe your file is missing key details because the paperwork was rushed or lost. This is your chance to fill in the blanks. And it's not just for your own words. You can use this form to include statements from a spouse, a friend, or even a former medic or commanding officer who remembers what happened. When these personal accounts line up with your medical or service history, they can make your claim exponentially stronger. We've seen veterans go from 10% to 70% disability just by submitting a clear, honest statement that connected the dots. The biggest mistake? Thinking this form is optional. It's not. In many cases, it's the one thing that pushes your file over the edge, especially when your official records don't paint the full picture. So before you submit anything else, ask yourself, what story isn't being told in my paperwork? Because this one document might be the only chance you get to tell it. Sometimes, the truth about what happened during your service never made it into the official record. Maybe it was chaos, maybe it was trauma. Maybe it just wasn't the kind of thing you filed paperwork for at the time. But the VA doesn't work off assumptions, they work off documentation. And that's exactly why buddy statements are one of the most powerful tools you probably haven't used. VA Form 21-Protection lets someone who served with you, a fellow veteran, a commanding officer, a medic, or even a bunkmate, write a first-hand account of what they saw, not hearsay, not second-hand stories, direct observation. They can confirm that you were there when the explosion went off, that you limped for weeks after that patrol, that you started changing after that mission, even if no one filed a report. These statements matter because they prove context. They fill the void when your medical records fall short, and most importantly, they come from someone who understands what the military was really like. The VA takes them seriously, especially for claims related to PTSD, MST, or injuries that went undocumented in combat zones. And it's not just about proving the past. A strong buddy statement can help connect symptoms you're still dealing with today to what happened back then, which could change your disability rating or get a claim approved that was previously denied. So think back. Who was there when it happened? Who remembers the moment your life changed, even if the paperwork doesn't? Reach out. Ask for their help. Because a single paragraph from someone who served beside you might be worth more than a stack of forgotten records. One of the biggest myths in the VA system is that You have to rely on their doctors and their evaluations. You don't. In fact, that mindset could be costing you thousands every single month. The truth is, your own private medical records, especially when paired with a Nexus letter, can be one of the most powerful tools you have. A Nexus letter is exactly what it sounds like, a written medical opinion that links your current condition to your time in service. It's not just a diagnosis, it's a clear professional explanation of why your injury, illness, or mental health issue is connected to what happened while you were enlisted. And when it comes from a credible doctor, ideally one who understands VA language, it can carry massive weight. Here's the problem. Most veterans only submit what the VA gives them: rushed exams, surface-level assessments, and vague notes. And the VA uses that limited data to decide your rating or deny you altogether. But when you bring in independent records, imaging scans, long-term treatment notes, pain management plans, psychiatric reports, you're giving the VA a fuller, clearer picture they can't ignore. We've seen claims go from 0 to approved because of one strong Nexus letter. We've seen 30% ratings jump to 70% or higher, not because the condition changed, but because the documentation finally told the truth. So if you've been living with pain, trauma, or illness that traces back to your service, don't wait for the VA to see it. Show them. Collect your medical records. Talk to your physician. And if your doctor believes your condition is service-connected, ask them to put it in writing. Because when it's your word versus the system, they'll always question it. But when your doctor backs you up with facts, evidence, and clarity, they listen. Physical injuries are easy to see. Mental wounds? Not so much. And that's exactly why so many veterans get severely underrated or completely overlooked when it comes to conditions like PTSD, anxiety, depression, or trauma-related disorders. The system isn't built to understand what you carry every day, and unless you fight to document it properly, you'll never get the benefits you've earned. The truth is, VA mental health evaluations are often rushed and surface level. You might talk to a stranger for 20 minutes, get asked a few scripted questions, and walk away with a generic diagnosis that barely scratches the surface. That's not a real picture of what you're dealing with, and it's definitely not enough to get a rating that reflects the impact on your life. That's where independent mental health evaluations come in. Outside psychologists or psychiatrists, especially those with trauma experience, can provide detailed, evidence-backed reports that describe exactly how your condition affects your work, your relationships, your daily routines, and your ability to function. And yes, the VA accepts these. You don't need to wait for their evaluation if you already know what you're facing. In fact, the earlier you bring in outside documentation, the stronger your claim becomes. These evaluations can directly lead to higher ratings, retroactive payments, and in some cases, total disability based on individual unemployability. And it's not just about getting approved, it's about finally being seen. Because living with trauma and being told it's not severe enough is one of the most damaging things a veteran can experience. You served. You lived through things most people can't imagine. You shouldn't have to convince anyone that it left a mark. So if the VA brushed past your mental health, go outside the system. Find a professional who listens, documents, and puts it all in writing. Because your story deserves more than a checkbox on a rushed intake form. And that single report could change everything. Most veterans think they have to wait around for a VA doctor to evaluate their condition, as if the government is the only one allowed to say how much you're suffering. But that's not the case. In fact, there's a powerful tool that lets your own doctor speak directly to the VA in their language. It's called a Disability Benefits Questionnaire, or DBQ, and most people have never even heard of it. A DBQ is a standardized form created by the VA itself. It breaks down each medical condition into measurable criteria, exactly what the VA looks for when assigning a rating. Pain level, range of motion, frequency of symptoms, daily impact, it's all there. And here's the secret. You don't need a VA doctor to fill it out. Your private physician can complete it, and if they do it thoroughly, it can carry just as much, if not more weight, than a rushed VA exam. Let's be real. VA exams are often a roll of the dice. Sometimes you get a good one. Most times you don't. You're seen for 10 minutes, asked a few questions, and handed a generic report that doesn't even begin to explain your reality. But with a DBQ from a doctor who actually knows you, who's treated you for years, who understands the ups and downs of your condition, now the VA has no excuse to overlook what you're going through. These forms are especially critical for rating increases. If your condition has gotten worse, but your last VA rating is still sitting at 30%, a new DBQ can prove it's time for an update. It puts the decision makers in a corner, because now you've got structured, clinical evidence that backs up your claim, and it's in their own format. It's fast, it's clear, and it can absolutely change the outcome of your case. So ask your doctor, download the form, bring it in, because if you're letting the VA speak for your condition, you're probably being underrepresented and underpaid. You don't need a brand new diagnosis to get more benefits. You just need to prove that what you're dealing with has gotten worse. And the truth is, many veterans don't realize they're allowed to submit their own evidence, even without new medical tests. It's called lay evidence, and it might be the most underused advantage in the entire VA system. Lay evidence is any statement, written in plain language, that describes how your condition impacts your daily life. It doesn't come from a doctor, it comes from you, or your spouse, or someone who sees you every day. These aren't technical reports. They're personal, first-hand observations. And when done right, they can be just as powerful as a medical file. Maybe your back pain now makes it hard to sleep. Maybe your depression has gotten worse since your last rating, and you've withdrawn from friends and family. Maybe simple tasks like showering, standing too long, or driving are now a daily struggle. These things matter, and the VA has a legal obligation to consider them. And yet, most veterans never submit them. You can describe your daily challenges in a personal statement. Your spouse or caregiver can write about how your condition affects your mood, memory, or mobility. A friend or coworker can explain the changes they've seen in your behavior or energy levels. All of that counts, and when your words line up with your medical records, the VA is forced to pay attention. This kind of evidence is especially important when you're trying to get a rating increase, because the issue isn't whether your condition exists, it's whether it's gotten worse. And no one knows that better than the people living through it. So take a moment. Think about your day-to-day life now versus a few years ago. Write it down. Ask someone close to you to do the same. Because even if you've already been rated, you can still be underrated. And this is how you prove it. Not every veteran can keep working, and not every disability shows up in a way that's easy to measure. Maybe your pain flares up unpredictably. Maybe your PTSD makes it impossible to concentrate. Maybe the side effects of your medications leave you groggy, distracted, or exhausted. But unless you spell out exactly how your service-connected conditions affect your ability to work, the VA has no reason to consider it. That's where a vocational impact statement can change everything. This document explains, in simple but powerful terms, how your disabilities interfere with your ability to maintain substantially gainful employment. In other words, it proves that you physically or mentally can't keep a steady, meaningful job because of your service-connected conditions. And that's the gateway to something called TDIU, Total Disability Based on Individual Unemployability. Here's the part most veterans don't realize. You don't need a 100% disability rating to be paid like you have one. If your combined rating is 60%, or if you have multiple conditions totaling 70%, with one of them at least 40%, you can qualify for TDIU, but only if you prove your unemployability. And that proof often comes in the form of a well-written vocational statement. This isn't guesswork. Vocational experts are trained to evaluate whether someone can realistically hold down a job, not just technically, but practically. They factor in things like missed workdays, inability to focus, physical restrictions, and emotional stability. And when their statement clearly shows that your conditions prevent consistent employment, the VA has to take notice. We've seen veterans go from $100 to $300 a month to over $3,600, not because their conditions got worse, but because they finally submitted the right documentation. This isn't about exaggerating, it's about being honest and making sure your reality is fully represented on paper. So if you've stopped working, or you're just barely hanging on, don't assume the VA knows that. Show them. Get a vocational expert. Submit the statement, because you might already qualify for a benefit you didn't even know existed, and once it's approved, it could change everything. Sometimes the only reason a veteran gets denied is because the VA couldn't find the evidence, not because it doesn't exist, but because it was never properly included in your file. That's why service treatment records and archived military files are so critical and so commonly overlooked. If you were treated during your time in service, whether it was a combat injury, a clinic visit, or even a mental health appointment, there's likely a paper trail. But here's the catch. Those records don't always make it into your VA claim file automatically, and if they're missing, the VA might simply mark your claim as unsupported, even if your memory is clear and your symptoms are real. Many veterans assume that their medical records from the military are already on file. But the truth is, you may need to track them down yourself. That includes reaching out to the National Personnel Records Center, requesting documents through FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, or contacting the base hospital or clinic where you were treated, even if it was decades ago. And don't stop at just the basics. Sick call logs, field medical reports, unit rosters, or even deployment orders can sometimes support your claim, especially if your condition ties back to an incident that was never formally diagnosed at the time. These seemingly minor documents can become the key that turns a denial into a full approval, especially for older claims or appeal cases. You wouldn't believe how many veterans finally win their case years later. Not because the facts changed, but because someone finally took the time to dig up the records that were missing all along. It's not easy. It takes time. But if your file is incomplete, the VA will never give you the benefit of the doubt. So don't wait for them to find it. Go get it. Request your full service treatment records. Look into archived files. Because what's missing from your claim might not be your condition. It might just be the paperwork. There's one document that almost no one talks about, and yet it could be worth tens of thousands of dollars in back pay. It's short, it's simple, and if you don't file it in time, you could lose months or even years of benefits you've rightfully earned. It's called the Intent to File, or VA Form 210966, and if you don't know what it is, this might be the most important thing you hear today. Here's how it works. The day you submit an intent to file, you lock in your effective date, the date the VA starts counting what they might owe you. And that's critical, because many veterans spend weeks or months gathering medical records, writing statements, or figuring out how to fill out their full application. But if you wait until everything's ready to officially apply, the clock starts way later, and that means less back pay. Let's say you submit your full claim in October, but you've actually been preparing since June. If you didn't file the intent to file back in June, you just gave up 4 months of compensation. For no reason. That could be thousands of dollars lost just because of a missing one-page form. Even worse, many veterans who are still thinking about applying don't file anything at all. And by the time they finally do, the VA only counts the date they received the full application. No matter how long you've been suffering or how much you've spent on care in the meantime, those early months are gone. But if you had filed the intent to file? Different story. That one page would have locked in your benefits from the earlier date, giving you up to 12 full months to finish your paperwork without losing a dime in the process. And here's the best part, You can file one today, even if you're not ready yet, even if you're still figuring things out. You can submit it online, by mail, or even call the VA and have them do it over the phone. No evidence needed, no long forms, just a simple step that could end up being worth more than anything else in your entire claim. So don't wait. If you're even thinking about applying, get that intent to file submitted now. Because once those months pass, there's no getting them back, and the VA won't remind you to protect them. The truth is, most veterans aren't denied benefits because they don't qualify. They're denied because they never knew what to file. The paperwork is confusing, the system is slow, and unless someone tells you what to look for, it's easy to assume you're already getting everything you're owed. But now, you know better. These 9 documents, the statements, the forms, the evaluations, they aren't just technicalities. They're your voice. They're your chance to be seen clearly by a system that too often treats veterans like numbers instead of people. And in many cases, just one of these forms can mean the difference between struggling and finally having room to breathe. If you've been waiting, if you've been told no, if you've started to believe that maybe this is just as good as it gets, don't settle. Go back. Recheck your file. Rebuild your claim. The benefits are there. You just have to claim them with the right tools in hand. If this video helped shine a light on something you didn't know before, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share which document surprised you the most. Or tell us how you plan to use this info moving forward. Your story could help another veteran take that first step. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Your support helps us keep making content that informs, supports, and empowers the people who've already given so much. Thank you for watching, and thank you sincerely for your service.